Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Future is Bilingual podcast. Today, I'm here with Jesse, and he's going to tell us all about his journey. So, Jesse, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, so my name's Jesse, and I'm originally from Pennsylvania in the United States. In 2006, I went to South Korea to
Oh.
teach English. And with the intention, because I came here to Spain, to Seville in
Mhm.
2006 to visit, fell in love with it. It
Mm.
was really difficult for an English teacher, especially an American English teacher, to find work here with no teaching experience, no TEFL certificate.
Oh.
But in South Korea, all you needed to be was a native speaker and have a university degree in
Mhm.
anything. I checked both of those boxes. So I went to South Korea with the intention to stay there for 1 year, maybe 2 years to get experience. It turned into 7. I stayed there for 7 years, and then I came here, and I've been living in Spain since 2010.
Wow. So that was my dream too. When I first went abroad, I was after graduating from university, I was like, okay, now I want to teach English. And I did a certification. I think it was a TOEFL certification, like 100 hours. And I applied to South Korea, but then I also applied to France and I got into the French one. So I ended up going to France, but my dream was to go to South Korea. I've never been.
Really?
Yes, I had Korean friends in college, which exposed me to the language, and I started studying it on my own. So I was like, 안녕하세요, 잘 지냈어요? Blah, blah, blah,
Oh,
all
that's so cool.
yeah, but then I never got to go. So I got
Okay,
to
during
live
this,
my
I may actually turn into sometimes the interviewer. If that happens, just stop me and
no
say,
worries, no
yes,
worries.
and answer the questions. But what was it about? I mean, that's usually not the that's the opposite destination than I went, right?
Right.
I had Korean friends growing up too. I
Mm.
took martial arts, a Korean martial art, Tang Soo Do,
Oh, nice.
and so I had a familiarity with Korea, but that was like a starting point for me. But that
Mhm.
was the dream. Did you ever end up making it there?
I've never been. No, I got to go to Japan with a high school that I was teaching for. That we still have this relationship between the two cities, one in Hokkaido in the north of Japan, and then this little tiny town that I was teaching in Massachusetts. And so every year we hosted Japanese students, but every 3 years, a group of us would go. Again, it was more for them to get English. But like every 3 years, we did the cultural stuff. We didn't do Japanese language, but we would have this cultural night every year, and they would give a performance every year when they came. And it was just like a really nice cultural exchange. But it happened to be before my kids were born. They needed another chaperone, and they were like, "Hey, you're young. You don't have kids. Do you want to go to Japan?" And I was like, "Heck yes, I will go to Japan." And so I've been to Japan, but not to Korea. My sister went. She's a lawyer, and all of her friends in law school were Korean. Not all of them, but like most of them. And one of them got married and invited her to a wedding. And I was like, oh, my sister got to go and I didn't get to go. And that was my dream. I was like, take me to the wedding. But yeah, one day I will go because I really am just fascinated by Korea. The language I find so beautiful. But yeah, tell me
That's
more
cool.
about Korea. Yeah. I have
Yeah.
not had a guest on to talk about South Korea yet, so please tell. Oh no, I did a little bit. Yoshito's wife is Korean, but he's Japanese French, so we focused more on his story.
Got it.
But
Got
yeah.
it. Yeah, Korea, it's a fascinating place. It's one of those places that I found that when foreigners go there, they either, you know, it's so different from the Western world. And not only that, it's so fascinating and dynamic because it's this interesting fusion between a long history, like
Mhm.
5,000-year history, plus being very modern and very new, very up to date, and very
Right,
young
right.
for what they have now in the modern Korea. It's very young since the Korean War, essentially, right,
Mm.
where they rebuilt. And so it's this dynamic like
Tradition with modernity. Yeah.
exactly. So sometimes it's a strange balance. And it's so different from Western cultures that either foreigners really struggle making it for a year,
Hmm.
or they really love it and they don't go back. They don't go back to their country, or
Mm.
they fall in love with someone or whatever.
Yeah.
I was in the camp. I was planning to stay for 1 year, maybe two, if I could make it.
Mm.
I mean, and it's just like, before I knew it, my first year was over. I was ready to sign again. Before I knew it, I was like taking a different job. I was signing again, and then getting a different job. And it just became my lifestyle. And I really enjoyed it. The Korean people are some of the most hospitable people overall that I've met in my life. Right.
Where
And
were
I
you
felt like
based?
I was
Which
in
city?
Busan.
Busan.
I
Oh,
was down south. Yeah.
okay. Yeah.
And which is even stranger as far as like we're talking about the modern and traditional mix, because they were really the only city that wasn't completely destroyed when the North Koreans and Chinese came down, to invade. We pushed them back up. And so it was really interesting. So I was in Busan, and I tell Korean people, whenever I tell Korean people, like, they're super hospitable. A lot of the times some of them, most of them will say, "Oh, thank you." But some of them will say, "Yeah, that's because you're a foreigner."
So between them, they're not as hospitable, but with a foreigner, they're going to show hospitality more.
I think they're still hospitable, but it's like, not as much.
They go above and beyond for the foreigner. Interesting. That's very interesting. Yeah. I did feel, again, I didn't really know any Japanese. I did a little bit of Pimsleur before going, but it was the first place I had traveled, and I've been to like 12, 13 countries, where I was just I looked so foreign. Like, I felt like I will never fit in here. I've lived in France, I've been all over Europe, even, Africa, Central America, but it was like, I could probably get by. Like, I could live in Costa Rica, I could live in someplace, but I was like, I don't think I didn't feel that I could actually like ever really be an insider. You know what I mean? Because it was like, I stuck out like a sore thumb. I did not understand the language. So I was like looking around. I had only done Pimsleur, which was the auditory. So I was sitting in my car, driving to work, repeating. So just listening, speaking. So I'm like, oh my God, all the signs. I can't even order ramen because I don't even know on the menu where it says ramen, just, I think that is a major hurdle. And I'm someone who loves languages. And yeah, maybe if I'd prepared and, I really knew I was going to go to Japan and study intensively for a year, but I still feel like, I don't know, it was like the only place I traveled that I was like, I couldn't live here. Like, I would live anywhere. I would live in Greece. I would live in Morocco. I would live in like any country, but like, for some reason, Japan was just like, I don't think I could live here.
Interesting. Korea is very similar.
Yeah, exactly. I'd probably have I would have probably the same sentiment. But it's just.
But there are differences between Japanese and Korean too. So who knows?
For sure. Right. We can't say they're the same. They're definitely not the same. We recognize Japan and Korea are very different. Obviously. Yeah.
And I think like for some people, I think people would say the opposite, like, oh, I couldn't live in Korea, but I do well in Japan. And some people, I can't live in Japan, but I do well in Korea. So I guess it's like personal experience too. And there definitely is that where you stick out. And it's kind of like you're a C-level celebrity almost, because you get eyeballs, you get like kind of like you see in the corner of your eye nudges and like, look, it's one of them, and you have kids coming up saying hello and hi, and people like, I've had grown men asking for me to take a picture with them. Did
you do it? Did you oblige?
Yeah, sure did. And then like one time at the beach, I had someone like someone asked, like a younger guy, like in his early 20s, asked me to take a picture with him. And then other people, they saw that, so I guess they figured I might have been somebody, and then they waited in line to get their picture taken with me. That felt pretty damn cool to happen once, to happen every day, it'd be something different. But it was fun. It was cool.
Oh my gosh.
You embrace those things like that.
I guess. Yeah. If you embrace that and just like, all right, like I stick out and it's fine.
It's a story.
I also traveled, right? I was in a group with high school students. It was like, a big group of us always going around, not a huge group, but it was like, 10 of us. So that's very different than having the experience of living there, you're by yourself, you're going around by yourself. Yeah, I might have felt more comfortable because I don't like the feeling of being a tourist. Like I'd rather
Yeah.
be by myself or with one person and just kind of like as much as I can blend in. And even if I do stick out and I can't speak the language, but like to be like
Assimilate.
a mass group of like tourists, like,
Yeah.
and I, it's probably very similar. Like we're like, okay, we got to avoid the trains at a certain hour because it's rush hour and like every businessman is walking, going to work. And it's like we're just in the way because we're this like mass group of like Americans like blocking and they're all like trying to rush through. It's like, okay, we're gonna avoid the trains from this time to this time. I don't know. It was just our schedule was like also like by the hour, by the minute. Like, here's what we're gonna do. I was like, wow, okay, this is like the Japanese way. Like they were explaining, like this is the Japanese way. They plan everything to the minute. So like our whole itinerary was like very scheduled. But it's just different, right? Different culture.
It
Uh,
is, and that's I had the same kind of experience in when I visited the Philippines. It was a very structured, very
mm,
you know, it was a tourist group,
mm.
right? So we went, and something about Koreans when they visit other countries, they like going to the Korean restaurants. So it was a tourist group in the Philippines, just going from Korean restaurant to Korean restaurant.
That's
And I
hilarious.
asked my friend who was the travel agent, I was like, it's like, why are we in the Philippines and we're only going to Korean restaurants? And he's like, he was the tour guide. He's like, well, Korean people like to have Korean restaurants and
The
either,
comfort food.
I guess. And it's one of these things that this was curious to me. Another person overheard us asking, talking about it. And he asked him in Korean, he
Oh,
probably didn't understand English very well. What was the question? It's like, he was just asking why we only go to Korean restaurants rather than go to Filipino restaurants. And it was like I almost saw a light bulb over the other guy's head, like, that's true. Why do we do that?
mm,
It was like I think it's just one of these cultural things that you
not
just
even
do
conscious. Yeah.
because, yeah, not even conscious.
Interesting. I was thinking maybe to support Koreans who are abroad, like you'd want to like help out your fellow brother, like, oh, we'll frequent your restaurant and give you business or, something like that, But no,
Yeah, I don't think it was given that
doesn't even
much.
enter that deep. Okay.
No.
It's just, what are we going to eat? Here's a place that has
Korean.
bulgogi. Let's go.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's great. And what about Korean? Did you learn? I'm assuming after 7 years, you must have picked up some
Yeah.
Korean.
Yeah, I was pretty intentional, at least, especially in the beginning about learning, and I've taken classes and thing.
Mm,
It's funny you mentioned Pimsleur. When I first came here to Spain, I used Pimsleur,
uh-huh.
and that got me a lot of the basics, and
I
I
like that
like the
method.
style. Mm.
Yeah. And it works for some because again, it's auditory. You're just listening and you're repeating and it's very repetitive.
Yes.
And not all the phrases were great. Like they were asking like, do you want to have a beer at my place in Japanese? And I was like, I just want to order water. Like, what is the word for water? Why am I learning like beer, like bira? And I was like, I need mitsu. Like, I don't need this.
Yeah.
But like they teach like it's the same exact phrase in every language. That's another thing. If you're a polyglot and you're going to use Pimsleur for different languages, I'm like, okay, now I know this phrase in these 6 languages because it's
Where's the
literally
hotel?
it's the same thing translated into every, and they'll mention the cultural, aspects that like, oh, this is not, not normally done, or like in this context you should do this, but it is kind of like the base is there, as like a language teacher and like a person who likes languages. I'm like, okay, I see the method behind this. They just kind of took these set phrases and translated them. But no,
Yeah.
I do. It kind of sounds like I'm saying bad things, but I do like the method. I think I was able to learn enough Japanese where I could go in and greet and ask, do you speak English? And then say like, America Jin desu, like I'm American and blah, 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 all the basics
Awesome.
as if they didn't know.
Yeah. I'm not from around here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But it was fun, and I got to use it. And my colleagues who are all not language people were like, look at her speaking Japanese. And I was like, I'm literally saying like konnichiwa, like I'm ohayo gozaimasu. Like I'm not saying anything. Like those are like things you can learn in like 5 minutes, right? But for
Yeah.
them, they didn't even take the 5 minutes to learn good
That's
morning,
just
hello.
it. The
And
same
so they
thing
were
with
impressed, and I
Korean.
was like, it wasn't really anything. Like,
Yeah. Same thing with Korean. And the thing about speaking Korean, which, speaking Korean, let me not give the misconception that I was completely fluent, right? I was conversational. I had Korean friends that couldn't speak English,
That's great.
but it was still like a struggle, you know what I mean? But
I know what you mean.
yeah, learning Korean or Japanese too, on Chinese, anything where, you know, especially they use different characters, it feels cool. You feel cool when you're using it in front of, whereas something like Spanish, right?
Huh.
I could not know any Spanish, have a word like casa and be able to read it at least,
Yeah.
right? Even if I would say something like quesa or something, you know what I mean? Like you can at least read it and be in the neighborhood. Something like Korean or Japanese, to be able to read that,
Yeah,
like,
it just feels cool.
Yeah.
You're on like another level of like, yeah, I know that this word, like just the script and
even though it's completely phonetic.
It is. That's why I love Korean. Korean is like so much easier script wise than Japanese or Chinese. But it is fun. Just to kind of like, I love the writing system. I love practicing it. I even taught my kids one Korean song. It's on, I think it's like on like a really old Instagram somewhere where they're like they sing this song about like 고세마리가 한 집에 있어 아빠, and like the song about the mom and the father and the baby bear and how like anyway they love this little song.
Awesome.
It's really cute. But like to even like for me like that song is cool because I know each, it's a really simple song, but like I know what each of the words, like each particle, you know, like oh is like bear, and then say is like three, and then so like how like there's like a counting particle, and then like han jibe, like in one house, and like just for me like as like a language nerd, you know, to have these really that's the level of my Korean. That's it. That's all I can
That's
do.
enough.
But I
That's
like to
enough
analyze.
cool.
Yeah, and then my kids sing it, and I like do these little like the bagong dung dung hey, he's like really fat, so I like do this like action with them, and you know they just we listen to it and they like it, and they can sing that one Korean song, which is really fun.
It is fun. And so when when Gangnam Style was big,
oh yeah,
and this was during, and then also like during the pandemic, during the quarantine, you know, we had certain songs that we played all the time to get animated and stuff, and like Gangnam Style was on there, and you know that's kind of repetitive. I mean, 사랑해, 사랑해. So like you get to teach them like 사랑해, 여자, and like
woman, right? 여자 and 사랑해 is I love you. Yeah.
We should say those. Yeah.
사랑, but like people don't know that, even though they all know that song. So now you know. 사랑해 is I love you.
You get to teach them those little expressions, and then like, you know, and 안녕하세요, which is the greeting, a long way to say hello, but that's the greeting.
Peace, yeah, it's like peace. Be like kind of be peaceful or something. Yeah. It's nice.
Yeah, and it's really cool because it's really fun. And my you know, now ex-wife, their mother made them like little stuffed animals. She was like into knitting for a while, and she made them stuffed animals. And she named the style of stuffed animal she made Chingu, which is friend. And it's a cool name. So that's one of the benefits of, you know, just introducing, even if your goal isn't to become fluent with your kids in a foreign language, like we're learning sign language together, but just from Instagram, from YouTube, with like different expressions. But to learn those different expressions, you're planting a seed in their minds and in their hearts when they're young, like 5 and under, 6 and under, 7 and under, into their hearts and into their almost DNA, into their subconscious of, you know, awareness of other cultures, of other languages, of other ways of communicating. And that's what's beautiful about it too. Yeah,
it's almost, I like to think of it like if you didn't have awareness of the other, you know, it's very plausible to live and just be this monolingual, you know, especially in the US, like to never hear another language because our news, our TV, like it's very easy to just live in a very monolingual. English is everywhere in my house, in my school. None of my friends speak another language, at least not to me. But it's like we're like chipping away at it a little bit. Like, hey, guess what? Like putting a little crack. Like there's this other language over here. Like, you know, so that it's not this like monolingual I don't even know what to call it. Like you're in this little like
Like a bubble.
dome. Yeah, like it's kind of like breaking away at it little by little. So yeah, even if it's just a little crack, like, hey, guess what? Some people use their hands to speak. That is super cool, right?
Yeah.
And like there's advantages to that. Like they can say things silently that nobody else understands and be like, hey, this is an awful party. Let's get out of here. And like
Yeah.
not offend people by saying it out loud. I don't know. There's like it's just it's cool to like chip away a little bit at it. Even with my kids, like I'll tell them like, hey, other cultures eat with their hands all on like they share one plate and they all eat with their hands. And my kids are like, really? And show them pictures. I'm like, yeah, look, this is like super normal. Some people use like leaves and that's their plate. Some people, sit on the ground. They don't have like chairs and a table. Just to like open up them,
Open mind.
the minds. And yes, there's lots of great books. Like we have these great books about this is how we do it, which I always think of this. I always want to sing the song, but there's a
This
book
is
called
how me too, man.
I'm like, how do I read this book to my kids without singing this jam? But anyway, there's a
You
book that
don't.
shows
You
different
don't. You
you
sing
can't.
it.
You literally can't. But it shows how different kids live around the world. So it's like here's a kid in Iran, and here's a kid in Japan, and here's a kid in Italy, and here's a kid in I don't even remember, like Colombia, but they're kind of like all over the globe. What they wear to school, where they sleep, and it's just a really cool book. But yeah, I just think it's so important because it just normalizes it so that when they see something different or they hear someone speaking a different language, they're not like, oh, what's wrong with that person? Or, oh, why do they have an accent? Why do they speak
That's
like,
weird. Like
right?
that's
Like
weird.
that's weird. That's
Different. Maybe
bad.
not even that, because they might, depending on how young, like they might not even think like what's wrong with them, but like, normally anything that's weird and different outside of what we're familiar with, we think that we're kind of shy away from it. You
Exactly.
know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Well, because if everybody speaks a certain way and then they say one person's the outlier, oh, we don't want that, right? Like that's,
Yeah.
but no, that's that's actually like the majority, right? So to make that seem very normal is super important. Okay, tell us, because you didn't say, you mentioned kids, but how old are they?
So my kids are 7. Well, Sophia's gonna turn 8 this weekend,
Ooh,
and 5. Dante's 5.
very exciting.
And you were talking about another advantages of teaching them other language and sprinkling other languages.
Mm.
So sign language, for example, we get to say I love you, and we do it enough. And by the way, this with the 3 fingers for
It's
the
wrong?
audio listeners is I love you. If you put your middle finger up and cross that, it means I love you very much.
No, it's hard to do. Okay.
It is hard to do at first. So like,
That adds very much to it.
yeah,
Oh, yeah, because
and I learned
everybody kind of knows this
everyone
one.
kind
Just
of knows this.
I love that. That's so great.
Yeah, so much, right?
Mhm.
And so I wish that I knew where I learned that so I could give them a shout out, but it was for someone on YouTube or Instagram. But
Mhm.
anyway, so an advantage when we were at like a school performance, a school show at my children's school.
Mhm.
And Dante was playing with his friends, and I could give him a hug and a kiss and say goodbye when I had to leave. I had to go do something. And Sophia was watching the talent show that was going on, and I was looking for her over there, and then we caught eyes, and I was like, I'm gonna go. She's like, okay. I'm like, I love you. And then she just like raised her hands and like, I love you very much there too.
Oh,
And like it's those kinds of like little sprinkling moments that you never know when you can use them in a practical way for you too.
100%. And I did baby sign with my kids, and it was super useful. Because they're at that state, yeah, exactly, milk and more, but they're at that stage where they can't say the word, like their mouth isn't able to form, even though they cognitively can understand it. So when kids are frustrated, right, they can at least sign to you more or milk. So yeah, I did all the little baby sign, and one of my first posts on Instagram was my daughter making the sign more, but she was saying in Polish, więcej, więcej, which means more. It was super cute.
Awesome.
But yeah, there's so many advantages to it. And I or you could just learn to speak Italian and then you'd learn to speak. I'm just kidding. I love Italian. But I do love how they have and it's not just I think the Italians get most of the credit for the hand gestures, but there's a plenty in French. I'm sure there's plenty in Spain and different dialects of Spanish and things. But yeah, it's definitely useful to be like, what do they do in French? They do like, let's get out of here.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, like there's like little like symbols you can do so that people know this for them is drunk. I'm
Wow, look
turning
at
my finger,
that.
turning a fist in front of my nose. Yeah, we would do like he drank too much, but they do like
Yeah.
this. Il est bourré.
No. Interesting,
Yeah,
interesting.
so it's fun to teach. I sometimes with my higher students would teach some of those just for fun. Like, hey, like, can you guess what this means?
Yeah, yeah.
So wait, tell us. So they are 5 and almost 8. Have they lived their whole life in Spain?
Yeah, they were
Okay,
born here. Both
born
of
in
them were
Spain.
born here and
Mhm.
raised here.
Okay. How did you raise them? Like, what was the parenting plan? Were you always speaking English?
Yeah, so their mother's Spanish.
Hmm.
And so I realized that it was up to me. And this is great for anyone listening, that you are teaching your native language, but you're living in a local language that's not your native language. So let's say like someone's Mexican raising their kids up in the United States,
Hmm.
right? So the burden of responsibility is on you
Yeah,
to keep your native language
you have to
going.
recognize. Yeah.
Yes, and it's not just going to automatically happen. I've seen like lots of parents are like, they'll learn. Like, well, how are they going to learn unless you use it with them and teach them, right?
Right.
So I was very intentional with, that they're raised in a bilingual home
Hmm.
and that they're going to be bilingual. And when I say that, I get the feeling that it sounds like, you're authoritarian, we speak multiple languages, but it's nothing like that. Mostly the decision making and deciding that they're going to be raised bilingually, it comes up to me,
Yeah.
how I interact with them,
Right.
not really putting pressure on them.
Interesting.
And what I think we'll probably get into later is like different techniques, different ways that I use. But the biggest thing that I can say to help your children grow up with a bilingual environment is to make the language fun
Mm.
and make it relevant to them. Things like this, the I love you in sign
Yeah.
language, things like saranghe, things like chingu, like their
Yeah.
friend, things that are relevant to them, make the language relevant to them
Mm.
and be consistent with your use,
Yeah.
and it's gonna feel weird at first, like in the playground, other people, other parents are speaking, let's say English, if you are a
Hmm.
Spanish speaking person and you're speaking Spanish with your children. Sometimes some parents can feel like they are, they're kind of like outcasting themselves or whatever.
Or their kid, like they're gonna
Or the
embarrass
kid
them, or
or
yeah,
something.
you worry too much about what other people think.
Exactly.
Cannot do that in this
Yeah,
case.
because what other people think, or in any case,
And
really,
who cares?
other people think is irrelevant. Because guess what? If they judge you, okay, cool. Guess what? Your child's being raised to speak multiple languages.
Yeah. I don't let them call me out. People would ask me like, what language is that? Because I would be speaking Polish. Like, is that Russian? Like, oh no, it's Polish, but they're similar,
Yeah,
family.
yeah.
And it
Sometimes
would
it can
just
be
it
a great
invited,
conversation
yeah,
starter.
exactly. It invited questions and people would be curious and oh, it's so cute because they'd hear them speaking in a different language and some people appreciated it. And if someone has something bad to say, go ahead. Like I'm ready.
Yeah, and
I'm
I'd be willing to bet that most of the time, and maybe even every time, people didn't have bad things to say. It's
yeah,
probably like our own imaginations that like
our fear.
inflate, like our insecurities,
Hmm.
right? And that's what happens most of the time.
Yeah. Well, we do have to say that the dynamic has changed immensely from, let's say, like 1950s to
Yeah,
now, where it was shunned and it was,
yeah,
shameful to speak another language. And the thought was you would, give your kid an accent and they won't speak English like a true American. I'm talking just for the United States context. I don't know, but it's probably similar other places because
yeah,
assimilation is an issue everywhere where you want your kid to fit in. But we have at least changed and evolved. And I think for the most part, I also live in the Northeast, not far from Pennsylvania where you're from, and it's much more progressive. So I cannot speak to the entire United States. I don't know what the sentiment is in the South, for example, or the central states and things like that. But I
Yeah,
do
but
think it's
overall, it is
progressed,
more,
acceptable.
multicultural,
Mm.
and it's funny you say that about the 1950s. One of the reasons that I am helping parents raise bilingual kids is because my grandmother's Mexican,
Oh.
and she was actually a Spanish teacher,
Mm.
but none of her kids, my mom, my aunts, uncle, like they don't speak Spanish. So
Hmm.
then we don't,
Right.
but that could have been like part of our family culture to be passed down. But it's just that she didn't have these skills. She didn't have the support, of her, of my grandfather,
Hmm.
old school, like
Yep.
American, but also like not really present. Um, and then they divorced in the like 1960s, which was
Wow.
kind of like taboo at the time too.
Hmm.
But so she didn't have these skills or these tools that we have today, that or like help like what we're doing
The
or
knowledge
this
was not there.
podcast.
Yeah.
No, there was no support there. So like, and kids can wear you down.
Oh yeah.
Like that, can I have a cookie? No, not right now. Not before. Daddy, can I have a cookie? No, not right now. Before dinner.
Just
Daddy,
one.
can I have a cookie? Just one, please,
Come
please.
on. Just today,
Okay,
just this
just
time.
take this. Let me finish it. You know what I mean? Like they can wear you down.
Oh, kids are exhausting. I mean, anyone
Yeah,
listening to this, whether you're a parent or not, if you have nieces, nephews, if you've babysat, if you've taught, I mean, I think if you've been in a place where there's children, like you get it. I mean, not to the same extent when they're not your own responsibility, but you get it. Kids are exhausting. And I think
and it's
patterns
important.
also start where you've spoken to them already, let's say in
Yeah,
English, and you're like, oh, like now they're 5 and they always answer me in
yes,
English. It's hard to break a pattern. It's hard even for ourselves, right? Like that, if that's the pattern that
yes.
we've done, it's also on us, it's hard, on them, it's hard. They're like, I don't understand what you're saying. And then you're just like, okay, I'll just say it in English then. Like
Oh, and
we're
yeah,
wasting
yeah,
time here with me saying it 3 different times.
yeah.
There's so many
And
reasons why it's hard. There's so many. And I think it is great that we're talking about this because a lot of people come on and, bless them, they're all wonderful, but they're like, I always speak this language to my kids and now they're fluent and blah blah. And it's like, okay, that's awesome. And like I wish that was everyone's case, but I do need more episodes where it's like, dang, this was hard. And like I didn't start early enough and now my kid only responds in English. And like let's, if there's another different language, or for you, your kids are like, they're always responding in Spanish and I want them to speak English. It's hard. It can be
yeah,
very hard.
I mean,
It's not as like
it's not
easygoing.
a smooth sail,
It's not a smooth
right?
sail. There's bumps,
And
there's setbacks.
that's another misconception that people, and there are excuses everywhere for every situation. There are, like you said, there are bad habits that, I mean, anyone that has wanted to go to the gym and they'll start on Monday knows how difficult it is to start a good habit or start to change
Mm.
a habit, right?
And by Tuesday, you
I'll
don't
do
want to
it
go.
Monday. Or Monday, I don't want to go. Oh, just like, oh, and then you hit your snooze a few too many times. And then, oh, well, I missed the gym. I'll start tomorrow. And then tomorrow. And then, well, now it's Thursday. So I
I'll
don't
just
want to
wait till
start on
Monday.
Friday. I'll wait until Monday. You know what I mean? So, and it's the
Oh.
same thing with talking with our kids.
Mm.
There are a common misconception. People are like, yeah, well, it's easy for you because you're American and their mother's Spanish, so it's easy. And it's like, yeah,
No.
in some aspects, it's easier than what you have. In other aspects, guess what? Your situation is easier than mine. Because guess what?
Exactly.
If you're communicating in English and your native language is Spanish or your native language is Korean or whatever, like you have that experience of learning another language to a proficient level or to an intermediate level, whatever,
Hmm.
but like you have that experience. So it's like every situation has its own challenges and has its own easy points. It comes down to making a decision. Like,
Yeah.
are you going to
And
make a
sticking to it.
decision and sticking? That's what it
Yeah.
is. That, yeah,
It's
exactly.
so simple, but it's so hard.
Yeah,
We can
yeah.
boil it down to that, but
And
it's
to
the
me, like
every
when you
day.
make a decision, it implies sticking to it, right? Or else it's not a decision, or else it's like
It's a whim. It's
a good idea or
yeah.
something. But like making a decision and yeah, going by that decision and also giving yourself grace,
Mm.
because there are so many times, like going to the gym, you go 3 days and then you miss, Thursday, you haven't formed that habit. So Thursday you miss. You're like, well, I
Jump
might as
back
well
on.
start again Monday. No, give yourself grace. Okay, today was today. One day it's okay to miss. 2 days you're starting a habit, right? So, and I do that with journaling too.
Mm.
Like, give yourself grace and the flexibility to, not be militant with yourself and not be militant with your kids, but also keeping that eye on the target that you want bilingual kids. You want multilingual kids. If you're listening to this show, that's what you want.
Yep.
And yeah. And so what's the most efficient way to get there, but make it fun,
Yeah.
do activities together, play
That's so
music
important.
for your target language in the house.
Yeah.
We talked about Korean earlier.
Mm.
Play music for that target language in the house. Play music for other languages in the house.
Yeah.
One of the things that I used to do because we're in Spain.
Mhm.
So of course, and I had a like TV goes on in English. That's what it is.
Mhm.
But when Sophia was 2.5, 3, all of her friends, like in daycare, they were watching things in Spanish. They were watching YouTube in Spanish. Everything is Spanish. So of course she wants like TV on in Spanish. But her weakness was she didn't say, I want Spanish. She said, English, no. English, no. And so I
Okay.
didn't want to say English, yes. Like, you don't want to cause that combative relationship with the language you want, right? It's not this enforcing, because that what gets like pressed gets like resisted.
Exactly.
Gets resisted.
That's
right.
a
So
great point.
I knew that much. I didn't want to push that.
Right.
So I was like, how am I going to do this? And I thought, okay, we don't have to watch it in English. We don't have to watch like Masha and the Bear or whatever.
Oh,
English.
yeah.
But we can't watch it in Spanish either, because you
Mm.
have Spanish outside all the time.
Mm.
So we have on Netflix a whole list of potential languages that we can put it on. And she's 3, right? So I was like, and she doesn't know what these words mean. And I'm like, we could put it on in French, Italian, Russian, Chinese, German, whatever. And just because she was hard-headed,
She picked
and
something.
still is, like, she just chose the last thing I said. It might have been German or whatever.
Mm.
And I was like, okay, we'll put it on in there. And what I like to do is create as many win-win situations as I can. So if she chooses, it's like kind of like, do you want broccoli or do you want cauliflower? Right?
Pick
It's
one.
like a win-win, right?
Yeah.
So
and she picked it.
And she picked it. She picked German or whatever, Swedish or whatever.
She probably realized, oh, it's probably better in English. At least I'll understand.
Yeah, so that was my thinking. I was like, if she, doesn't like it, then she'll go back to English. But if she does like it, that's another language that she resonates with, and that's cool. Like, adding another language is always helpful.
Mm.
And she made it like 15 seconds. She's like, okay, English. I was like, it's up to you. It's your choice.
Yeah, because it's like, I don't even know what the heck they're saying. Please put it back. That's so funny. Yeah, no, a lot of parents have mentioned TV being really consistent with that. Being fun. I know one of my guests, Yoshito, has a book, and I was just reading through it the other day because it goes by like the age of the kids, like things that you can do that are fun games, but like it gets harder and more, more writing, because his focus is reading and writing, being literate in the language. And his languages are Japanese, French, Korean. Those are the home languages. So like,
oh, that's so cool.
Scripts, right? Like his wife's Korean, he's French, Japanese. So they really do need a lot of practice. They can't just pick up Spanish because they know English already, right? Like the languages are not the same script. But he also is releasing his second book, and I was watching a live with him, and he mentioned this 20-80 rule, which I've heard applied in so many contexts, right? Like eat well 80% of the time, and you can kind of, eat some more like junk food or stuff that's not super healthy 20%, and you'll still be fine, like the moderation. And he said that about make it, the game has to be like 80% fun, but like there could be like 20% where they have to write or they have to read in order to play, right? Like there is some sort of underlying lesson going on, but like they don't really know it. Like it's hidden by this 80% fun that's going on. And I was like, oh yes, that's like such a good golden rule, the 80-20. You know,
That's
I
a
made,
good application for the 80-20 rule,
yeah, and
actually.
I love it. And I actually made, my son is 5, so he's in kindergarten. He's almost 6, and he's, you know, learning to read. And so this year for Easter, I made a scavenger hunt because it was like, okay, I'm actually going to take the time, and like super simple, but it was like, look, you know, under the table, or like it's where you throw things. We have this little like ledge from the second floor where you can, it's like the staircase, but basically they throw things down the stairs from that ledge. So I was like, it's where you throw your toys, or just like really simple sentences, but like he had to kind of read it. And he told me if he was like, just read it to me, you know, like he was kind of getting tired at the end. But it was like enough, like there was like that 20% of like he did have to kind of figure it out. And then, but like mostly it was just fun and running around and finding eggs and finding clues and then finding their little Easter basket at the end. But yeah, so I was just thinking like that the fun aspect is so important, and following what your kid wants. You know, if right now my kids are into Pokemon and like, okay, I'm gonna like, you know, go all in, let's talk Pokemon. But like whatever
Oh,
is the interest, you know, like we can't force on them like, well, no, I'd really rather you talk about, you know, this, that, or the other. No, like you can't be authoritarian, like you're saying, and dictate what they're gonna do and what they're gonna like. You can just give them these good options, like, well, do you want to watch Pokemon in English or not watch Pokemon?
dude, yes. And leaning into what they think is fun and what they enjoy is such like it makes it so effortless and so easy because it's something they like anyway. And by the way, I don't want to say effortless meaning like
More
you
on
know,
their part. It's still effort on our part. I feel like
kind of, but if you do it right, it doesn't have, if you involve yourself, I think that's like, it's not like a set it and forget it model. Do you know what I mean?
oh
Like,
man.
you just, yeah, right. Yeah, I have to be involved. Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
like play video games with your kids.
Mm-hmm.
You know, include things like little expressions,
Yeah.
like it's your turn, you know, in whatever language you want to teach them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, your turn. You win. I'm gonna win this time, or you
Yeah.
know, if it's a dice game, you rolled a 6 or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Any way that you can naturally include any of that, any of the target language into your communication, into your fun. And it doesn't have to be like domineering, like this is the rule.
Yeah. You have
Like
to
my
speak.
kids speak Spanish with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And one day, like Sophia saw, like they were playing with some like English speaking kids too, like at the playground. And then she just tells me, Daddy, Dante and I decided we're gonna, when we're with you, we're gonna speak English with each other. It's like, that's a great idea.
Awesome.
They they haven't done that. And sometimes I'll remind her, I'll be like, weren't you gonna speak English with each other when you're with me?
Mm,
Yeah, but we're not doing that. You know, like, okay,
yeah.
it'll
Yeah.
come one day, or it doesn't, whatever. But
But they have like they still have English. It's not that they
they
have
have
a
the awareness.
0 level of English. And
Yeah.
I think that's the real key, is that we have to let go of the perfectionist, the 100%. You will only
Yes.
speak, you know, if I want
Have
my kids to
one
speak French,
term,
you'll
one
only speak
language.
French around me, and then I'm going to be super strict and mean about, no, like
Yes.
that's
Yes.
not the way to win. You get more
Yes.
bees with honey than with I forget that
Absolutely.
expression, but
Yeah, more flies with honey than with
oh,
vinegar or something.
I thought it was bees. I don't know. I guess
Well,
neither
bees
of them.
already made honey, so I don't know if they would come to honey.
True.
Yeah, but yeah, so that, like, because I'm in a couple multilingual parenting groups, right?
Mm,
And there's some parents that like swear by this, you know, one parent, one language. I respect it, I think, and I don't know enough about it to talk one way or another about it. But I do know a lot of people, they kind of go too strict
mm,
by that. You know, there are Spanish words I say like as part of my language, and now my daughter
mhm.
corrects me. Like instead of playground, I'll say parque.
Mhm.
Do you guys want to go to the parque?
Yeah.
You know,
You got the
or
Spanglish going on.
exactly.
Hmm.
It's things that, especially the things that I used since coming here, because I wasn't a parent in the United States. So like that's
Yeah.
just what it is. Like the wipies, I say toallitas,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
and things
Oh,
like
that's
that.
funny.
Sophia, can
Yeah.
you tell the
I think
toallitas?
we all do that. Or at least, I mean, I think most of us are not 100% perfect. I think a lot of us do mix and,
Yeah, and
but
but that's
that's
real
not what's
life, right?
projected, right? That's not what's written on, the posts on Instagram are all like, do it this way, do it that way, be perfect. It's 100%. I'm like, ooh, like I'm not 100%, or my kids aren't
Yeah,
speaking back to me. Like, yes, they're understanding, that receptive bilingualism, but they're speaking back, they're using English between them, all that stuff. Like, but
yeah.
it's just
To
the reality.
enforce it with like an iron fist, or to enforce like I was very, again, I'll use the same words that I used, but I get a different tone from other. I was very intentional and very, I, to enforce, they use the word enforce, in some
Mm,
Facebook posts, to enforce that my kid only speaks English in the house because they're, in another country.
right.
And maybe their parents were not native English speakers. That's another thing. Like if your native language isn't your target language,
Yep.
I think there's a need, and I think this is a human need, like the small man's complex, like they're usually
Prove
more
yourself.
aggressive, improve yourself, and overcompensate,
I feel
right?
like that happens in so many areas too. Like any convert is like way more religious than like the people
Oh,
born into the religion, right? Like
yeah,
they're like got to prove that they're like doing it by the book, doing all the things. With people who, yeah, if they're teaching a non-native language, like they are going to do it perfectly. Like they are not going to slip up. And like
yeah,
if we're teaching our native, we're like, yeah, whatever. Like, it's
yeah,
fine.
and that's just that it's that need to overcompensate, and I think non-native English speakers, especially with English is a
Mhm.
different animal too, because there's a lot of pressure that is involved with English. There's a certain level of elitism when
Yes,
it
I
comes
just
to
did a
learning.
talk at the Polyglot Gathering, and I have an episode, a solo episode I'm releasing about non-native versus native English teachers, exactly to this point. And it was a discussion, so it wasn't like me giving a talk. It was just me hosting a room, and people came and gave their opinions of like experiences they've had, and it was really interesting because I've never thought of it. I teach English as a native, it's my native tongue, and I teach non-native. I teach French, Spanish, and Polish. And it was so interesting because when they said it, I realized like, oh my gosh, that's so true that when we teach a non-native language, it doesn't matter, it's just non-native to you, right? So like a Spanish person teaching English or me teaching Spanish, we are more nitpicky and like we're more focused on like you have to say that right. We're focused on the pronunciation, we're really focused on the grammar. Whereas when you teach your native language, you're just like, yeah, just keep talking. You're doing
Yeah, we
great.
said this.
But even with my students, I feel like I am a little bit more focused on grammar, trying to help them, because you're looking at it at such a different angle because you
Yeah,
learned it. Whereas
yeah,
I never learned English as a second language. So I just want them to talk. And I'm like, great, you live here, you're doing awesome. Keep talking. I understand you. And other students were nitpicking them more than me. Like one lady, she kept saying pero, even though she was speaking English, she would say the word pero when instead of saying but, and she didn't even realize. And the other Spanish speaker from a different Spanish speaking country was like, "You keep saying pero." She was like, "I do," and then there was like every time she said it, she called her out. She was like, "Pero, pero, pero,"
ah,
and they were so much harsher to each other than I was. Just like, it's fine. I
Koreans said
understand.
that all the time. They said it was, some of them said it was easier to speak to native speakers than Korean speakers, because with Korean English speakers, they always
They're super
felt
harsh.
that they were going to be judged,
Yep. Yep. And
compared.
same thing. I heard that in Morocco that people don't want to speak French because they're like afraid to be judged by the other Moroccans who speak French better than them. So they'll just
Yeah,
like avoid it and speak in their dialect or speak in Arabic. And like, because I went there and I speak French. I don't speak Arabic. I speak a little bit, but it was like not enough to communicate. And I was like, why aren't they speaking to me in French? And it was like, they're afraid you're going to judge them. I was like, I'm not even French, y'all. Like, I'm not going to judge you. But yeah, it was like they thought I would judge them. They thought I would overcorrect them. So they were just not even, and they were like, yeah, that's super common. Like they eventually explained it to me because I was like, what is happening? I was like, we share this common language at French. Like, why aren't you?
Yeah,
But that's a very, very common, and it's, it's kind of unfortunate, but it's apparently international human trait that we have to kind of overcorrect, and we have this superiority when we are very good at something. And yeah.
yeah. It's almost like if kids go to a new school and they're uncomfortable, they might act not like themselves. They'll
Mhm.
either clam down, clam up,
Yeah.
and go in their shell, or they'll like overcompensate and be super aggressive, super
Mhm.
outgoing when that's not them necessarily.
Yeah.
Because they're nervous or they talk too much or whatever. I think that's human
Mm.
nature. And I guess like my main message, I guess, of what we're saying is like if your target language is not your native language, you know, show yourself grace and show your child grace.
Mm.
Language is meant to be a communication tool,
Mhm.
to be fun, to add color, to make it a fun part of your family culture, to
Yeah.
include this other language rather than like a rule set to follow.
Yes. Yeah. I 100% agree. I back that message. 100%. So in Spain, when will they take English? Will they be exempt, or will they take it? Or will they place into a higher level? Like, when do they start
My
with,
kids,
yeah, like when does that start? Because I know it's kind of
oh,
different. I
they're
mean,
normal. They're in like they go to a school where they teach English. They teach natural science in English, and
wow.
they have a few different English classes a week. Um,
Wow.
and they're in normal classes, yeah.
So it starts from that young age. It's not
Yeah.
like the US where we wait till 13,
No, no.
way past the prime, and then we're like, hey,
Yeah.
let's shove this down your throat for 2 years.
Yeah,
Okay, that's
that's like
good.
what I had. Yeah, and that's where most like non-native English countries, in Korea was the same way. I had students that were like 5 years old.
Wow. Well, I honestly do think that is better. And I
Yeah,
wish
for sure.
the US would get on board with that.
I think they are more and more.
Little, yeah, little by little, but it's definitely not the general public. It's not the
No.
free public schools offering that, unfortunately. And then you yourself, are you teaching in a school, or are you?
I'm mostly now teaching, when I teach online, like
Mm,
business English classes.
so
So I
for
don't really teach in the
adults?
academy, don't teach, kids anymore.
That's nice.
Although when I taught kids, the age that I love teaching the most, and I might, once I get more, stable and have with this other
Hmm.
career path that I'm doing, take on some teenage classes,
Yeah.
um, as a passion project. I love teaching teenagers. I love teaching them in the classroom, but also online, but mostly in the classroom.
Mm,
Um, because teenagers, they're the age group that teachers generally don't like. They steer away from, they're intimidated by, but they don't want to admit that they're intimidated, but they really are. They're like, um, and kind of going back to what we said earlier, when you're not comfortable with something, you have to
you
like
avoid it.
overcompensate, right? So
Yeah.
they're overly strict or they, whatever. And and teenagers, they mostly they want to be understood. Like
Hmm.
they need to be understood. Just take time to understand them. If there are
And they're
any,
finding themselves, which is a really fun
yeah,
phase. I
they
feel
don't
like,
even know who they are. They
yeah.
are finding themselves. That's such a great point. Like they're just finding, they feel so lost.
Yeah, I
And you
taught high
can
school for
see it.
5 years. I like high school more
Yeah.
than middle school and more than elementary. I did elementary as well in France, and I was like, nope, it's not for
Mhm.
me.
I like high school and I also like middle school. I used to not, but
Mm,
because it's just like once you understand, like, and I mean that this, whenever I say this, it sounds like it's insulting, but it's not. It's like teaching animals. It's a teaching in a zoo. And once you
it's so
understand,
true.
yeah, because
Yeah,
they're raging hormones, they're
they
lack on
can't sit
sleep.
down.
They can't
Yeah.
sit down. They're lacking sleep because like their brains, their chemicals in their brains are racing late at night. And
Mm,
so they can't go to sleep. Plus now they have like
cell phones. Mm,
devices all the time. And then they go to sleep super late and they have to wake up early to go to school. So they're sluggish and tired. They go to a school where they're always a fear of being judged by everyone else because they're judging themselves. Plus, they have these
yeah.
teachers that are intimidated, but it comes across as they hate them or they're hard on them.
Mm,
But it's because the teachers feel bad within themselves. And
It's such a hard age.
like their reasoning faculties, like some of them are there, some of them are not developed yet,
Yeah.
right? They have no like risk, like consequence, like their consequence reasoning isn't really developed, but their risk-taking parts of their brains is highly developed.
Super
So
highly.
there's that.
Yeah.
And so in that way, it really is like teaching animals. And once you understand that at the end of the day, they want to be loved, they want to be accepted, they want to be appreciated,
Mm.
and they want to be valued.
And they want to
if-
have fun, especially in a language class where we can do that. It's not learning history or math. It's like I would get them, get up, do this, go to the board, run around, let's
Yeah.
go 4 corners, like I'll give you a sentence and you go to like, oui, j'adore, je déteste, I love it, I hate it. Like, get them moving. We would do races, like we would do like all sorts of crazy things because you cannot have 14-year-olds, a class of 30 14-year-olds sitting in desks listening to you talk about the present tense, or something like, yes. I know it's like a vivid memory when you say something like that, like, oh, like it puts me back in the classroom in front of that
back
screen.
to the classroom right now. Yeah.
I love teaching online. I teach online now too. And I'm like with adults and I'm like, okay, it was a good experience. All my teaching experiences were very, useful, enriching.
Yeah.
And maybe I'll go back to high school.
But another thing that I like teaching teenagers, take a break from like the adult, because I teach adult business classes. Most of them pay to be there or the company pays to be there. We engage in fun adult conversations. We engage in, like real communication, things like that. But the thing I like about when I taught like a teenage class a couple of days a week is like they bring you back down to reality. It's easy when you have a group of motivated adults and you're having fun, progressive type conversations to think, yeah, I'm the best. And then you go into a teenage classroom and then it comes back to reality, be like, Jesse, you have to be present now because they don't, they're not going to say thank you. And I mean, they will eventually, you know what I mean? But they're not going to be involved. They're not going to want to like have a conversation. They're not going to like, you got to be on your game.
It's harder. Yeah. It definitely requires more effort. I also had the cell phones in a shoe holder because it was, you got to get those out of their hands if you want any sort of engagement. It was like cell phones on the wall or use them. Yes, we did lots of Kahoot and lots of, what's the other one? There's another one that's a quiz thing. And we would pull them out at certain times and I would even use them to practice like numbers. I wouldn't show them because I loved the smartboard. You could turn the smartboard like off for a second and I would read out the number. I had students come to my desk and read out the number and like, when they're Spanish or French 1, it's just like, 175. But then I'd have them read it eventually as like 1757 and then it would be like 1750, to like progressively make it harder. And that was like the best way to get their numbers because we'd always have the what's your phone number, that's like the classic conversation for like practicing numbers. But like this was like every couple days we would do a Kahoot and they'd have to understand the numbers because they want to get in, right? It's that intrinsic motivation of like, if you want to play Kahoot, you got to understand when I'm saying 68 or something like, wait, was it 70 or 60? And like, okay, repeat it for you or have a student read it. They love to come up and read it. And then that was great because they were the ones who had to translate it. But yeah, no, I mean, cell phones are great. I think we need to use them correctly. Just like any technology, like you said, with putting shows on in the language you want your child to know, all that good stuff. It's just a matter of being, what's the word? Being
creative, innovative, creative.
It's like intentional. I think that's what I want to say. Yeah, being very intentional. One of my
words for the year.
Yeah. Because you could just put it on like, oh, okay, we'll do this, we'll do that. But if you're not intentional about it, then there's no plan. There's no order and structure to like what you're doing. Like, okay, no, we're going to do it like this. This is the plan. Because you could really do anything you want if you're intentional about it.
Absolutely. The thing about being intentional also is like really understand the intention of it. So if you're teaching a language, like it's easy if you ask this to somebody, what is your intention with this? Well, to have them learn English, you know,
But why? You got to keep pushing.
why? Why? Exactly. What else? What else? And I do that. I have my day planner, and
Mm.
you might not be able to see this, and obviously the
Mm-hmm.
listeners can't, but I draw a line down the middle.
Yep.
And on the left side, I have the what, and I posted this on actually my Instagram or my LinkedIn too.
Okay.
On the
We'll link
left
up
side,
to
I
that.
have the what
Mhm.
do I have to do on that day? Like up to 6 tasks. And then on the right side, the why. And it's like the deeper intention behind it. So, and it could be like, for example, this call, to why, to provide value to the audience, things like that, right? So
Mhm.
it's not just because I have it on my schedule, right?
Right.
Like
Because I told her I would do it.
because I told her I would do it, you know, or like going shopping. Oh, well, I just have to go shopping. Okay, well, what's your intention to buy
Mm.
food? Okay, but you have
Why?
to go take your kids in there. Like, isn't there anything that you can do, like have them help, you
Mm.
know, have them put things in the car, have them, you know, be helpful, have them have fun, to
Yeah.
manage yourself. My intention is to manage myself if they ask for candy, you know, rather than just like,
Yep.
no, I told you no, don't you ask for, you know, anything when we go in the store. Like,
Mm.
how are you going to manage yourself to not blow up, right? So
Oh,
that might be an intention,
that's a
managing your,
parenting. Yeah, that's a huge parenting topic, right? It's like
yeah,
the trigger. Like, well, why are we being triggered, right? It's not that our kid is purposefully doing this. It's that like we need to work on our own reaction to what they're doing. They're just kids, right? Like
yes,
they're
yes.
having a
And they
bad
want
day.
candy. And guess what? When I was
Yeah,
a kid, candy too.
exactly. They're not doing it to like get back at us or be like horrible to us, or
Yes,
it's nothing personal. It's just that's how kids are.
yeah,
And yeah, I know that's a huge topic for all parents, right? Is like it is, it's more about managing ourselves. And same with the bilingual parenting, right? Like I can manage, meaning I can control what I do. I can control what language I speak to them in. I can't always control what language, like you said, they speak to each other in. That's out of my hands, right? Like, sure, I would love for my kids to like always speak Polish or always speak French, but like that's just not that's not the reality, right? So even if they are understanding me and answering me in English, I can still give them maybe the word that I would want them to say. But I'm gonna not ruin the relationship by being like, say it in Polish. Right? I
totally.
can say,
Totally.
okay, great. Like you want this, or like, yes, just repeating it in the language so that they hear it. Because it's probably the reason they're not answering in the language is that they're missing that vocab, or they're just tired, or they're hungry, or they're not feeling it right now, or there's
Or
a
it's
million
their habit
reasons.
to ask
It's
it
their
in the,
habit.
yeah,
There's so many reasons, but like not being punitive, not being right authoritarian, like you were saying. I
yeah,
think that's really important. Is
yeah,
this
because if,
should be a loving relationship. This is not a business
yeah,
transaction. This is our child, and it needs
yes,
to
when
be
they are speaking that other language, like you said, exactly, it could be a variety of reasons. Like you said, they might be tired, they might be habitually used to it coming out
exactly,
in that way. That it's not like vindictive against you
exactly
unless you do push hard on it, and then it will be
becomes a
against
push.
you.
Hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, but I think also one of my guests and friends, Mackenzie, was mentioning that she's like, well, I speak 100% in French, and like I recognize that he goes to daycare in English. He speaks English with his father. Like she's, the one
Yes.
parent, one language. She's like, I recognize that reality. So she just keeps kind of, supporting him, keeps saying it in
Yes.
French, and keeps,
Yes.
she's like, well,
Great
I can
job.
control myself. And I'm like, yes, that's 100%, like that in
Yes.
life, that's the only person we can really
Dude.
control. And that's
Amen.
all these lessons are like actually bigger lessons, right? You're
Totally.
just putting them in the bilingual parenting sphere.
That's it. That's exactly what it is. It's being intentional. Same thing with raising bilingual kids, or same thing with getting a new job, same thing with getting a promotion or getting more sales in
Yeah.
your business, or getting whatever.
You can't
getting
force
better
it. You
health.
can't force people to buy your stuff, right?
Yeah. And all you can do is control your own emotions, your own reaction, your own thinking, your own
Action.
words, which are very powerful. And guess what? If you keep showing your children, at least in my case, this is what I've found.
Mhm.
The more that you show them love and grace in your language, the more they're gonna want to adopt more of that language to communicate with you in.
Yeah.
Like, and
100%.
that's just it. They're gonna want to. And then that comes back to what you were saying earlier with that intrinsic motivation. Like, if love is there and you're communicating that with love, and
Mhm.
they feel comfortable and they feel safe and they feel they have that
Support
connection, like they're gonna
and
want.
connection. Connection's huge. Yeah, that's one of the big words that comes up a lot. Connection. Have you had a chance to come back to the States with them? Have they visited family over here?
Sophia, when she was 2.
Oof, yeah, that's a long time.
So yeah.
And little, that's a little baby, yeah.
Yeah, but I do notice that we just started shared custody.
Hmm.
So they're a week with me and a week with their mother.
Uh-huh.
And I have noticed that just that week straight with me, it's a big, big difference.
Mm.
It makes a big, big difference in their communication.
Yeah.
Before I mentioned the separation and divorce, the going through a divorce, you probably wouldn't have guessed that. And we lead separate lives, and she has a partner, and the point is nobody has it all together. You know what I mean? It's
That's
easy
so true.
kind of to go back to what we were saying earlier, that it's easy to like make excuses and compare yourself, like with language, like with
100%.
learning another language, Koreans like judging other Koreans. Well, that's because they're judging themselves, really.
Mhm.
But also, like, and with talking with your kids at the playground, who cares what that parent thinks? You know, you're raising your kids to be bilingual. Who cares what they think if I am in a divorce and they are still married?
Happily married.
That's just my
True.
point. Like,
Yeah.
who's to say they're happily married? They might be
Yes.
like we were, like, you know, over a
Very
year ago, like on the fringe, and just have this silent tension throughout the house that
Yeah.
is just there waiting to be bubbled over.
Right.
Who's to say they're happily married?
We really don't know. That's a
We don't
very
know.
good point.
One of the
And
things that I'm working
parenting.
towards now is not so much bilingual parenting, but you know, single parenting and helping parents in general, especially going through a divorce. Like, it's not always fun. I mean, it's not ever fun,
It's never
but like it can be healthy. The thing is also, like, you have guests on, and their point is to show people how to do it, right? So you want to show them the best parts of it, the parts that will motivate them to. So they're going to share the highlights, you know, but that's not necessarily reality, you know.
Right. Okay, so before we end, what is one word or phrase that you would like to teach us? It could be in English, because again, you're living in Spain, so you're raising your kids in English, or it could be a sentence in Spanish, as you wish.
Yeah. So during our conversation, I had a moment when I realized what this answer was going to be. And we've already gone over a few different phrases. Like, if you want to teach your kids saranghae, which means I love you in Korean, like, that's a cool thing. I love you very much in sign language. Although the audio listeners, we've described it a little bit how to do it. The crossed, like the Make-A-Wish crossed fingers.
You cross your fingers and put the other thumb and
the other I love
pinky
you
up.
part. Yeah. So, but the phrase, so that's a really great one. And the phrase that I realized that I'm gonna share is, that's a win. Because one thing, it's like daily habits, right? Daily habits, and gratitude is really big. I'm really big into gratitude. So before bed, you know, I ask the kids, what are you grateful for? And sometimes it's this game where they're like, when my daughter started it, she's like, oh no. I was like, tell me what you're grateful for. She's like, I'm grateful for my family and everything. But she's like, I'm grateful for my family and todo. And so she would say that. And so eventually I'd be like, what are you grateful for? And I'd say, I'm grateful for my family and todo. You can't say it. And so then it became a race. Like, who's going to say that
fast?
First? Yeah. And then my son started, and like, that's just a thing. But another thing we do, I celebrate wins during my day. It's so easy to get to the end of the day and be like, you kind of forget what happened, and then the bad things that happen
Bubble up.
kind of are highlighted in your mind, right?
Yep.
It's easy to forget the wins. So getting in the habit of like celebrating wins, and I do
I have
that
a whole episode on that.
awesome.
But weekly. So you're doing it daily, which is a little bit better.
Daily.
More
So
often.
in my evening journal, I write 3 wins that happened today. And it's just 3. It could be anything like parenting related, job related, personal related, whatever, action related. I completed all of my daily tasks, you know, things like that. And 3 wins that I want tomorrow. So that's really 3 wins that I had today, 3 wins that I want tomorrow. And then I ask myself a question, you know, because the better questions you ask, you want a better life, ask better questions. I got that from Tony Robbins. But so I started doing that with my kids. Tell me a win you had today. And then during the day, the trick is like during the day, celebrate when those wins happen. So I'll do that with myself. That's a win.
There you go.
And
yeah, it feels good.
So it feels good, right? Because then you acknowledge it, even in like a little thing. And so I would start celebrating with my kids, and just different moments throughout the day when my daughter does something, when my son does something, when I do something, like that's a win. And then they started saying that with different things.
Yeah.
Like, for example, yesterday, my daughter, she's still, and then here's a lesson for like parents, like she still struggles with like using the past tense for past stories, or doesn't and don't. Dante, don't let me.
Yeah.
Like, doesn't, like, and she knows that it's just fossilized.
My kids too have their little fossilized.
Yeah. And so like the other day she used didn't in a sentence correctly, and then she's like, Daddy, that's a win. And I'm like, what's a win? I didn't even catch it. And she's like, I said Dante didn't instead of don't. And I'm like, that is a win, you know, and awesome. Celebrate it. So I guess the expression to use is that's a win.
Yeah, it's very positive.
Yeah.
No, that's great, because I do, it's much easier to notice those errors, like you mentioned with your daughter. My kids as well, they say, you know, Daddy got this, and I'm like, Daddy has, you know, it's not even that it's an error, it's just like it just sounds better, right? Like or what other one? They say the past, they'll do like a double past, like, well, he didn't ate, he didn't went, and I'm like, no, he didn't go. You know, like those little because English is hard. Like the more I realize, and the more languages I study, the past is just like one word in most languages, you know? And like, why have we complicated it with like didn't go? But like, I went, and then the question is, did you go? Like, why do we do that? Why do we make it so hard? Like, teaching English is extremely frustrating to me, because I don't understand the grammar the same way I understand French grammar. Like, it hasn't been made, I use it correctly, but it hasn't made sense in my mind yet. And I am taking a class to perfect my like methodology of teaching English, because I have to. But also, like, it's a different can of worms, you know? If like you're not used to teaching your native language, it's so different than teaching your second, your third, your fourth, whatever language. You just didn't learn it the same.
Because you have to become aware of all the rules and then explain them.
It's so much. It's hard. It's almost harder to like reverse engineer, whereas in French I just did it the same way that I'm teaching you now. Like, yep, this is the way I learned it, and this is the way I'm going to teach it to you. I'm just not aware. So it does help when, let's say, your daughter points it out, or my students would point out things to me, and I'm like, oh, thank you for bringing that up, because I would have jumped right over it. I also feel I don't know what's hard for them. With French, I can immediately, or Spanish, you know, I can immediately like look at it and be like, that's going to be too hard for them. Or with my Polish, like I'm picking certain books because I'm like, that book is way too hard for, I know exactly what's too hard. I know what the level, you know, like where they are, what the level is. With English, I give them things I think is easy, and then they're like, they struggle so much with it. And I'm like, okay, I thought that was easy. Like, I have no idea what I should be assigning, or like what is at your level. So having those materials and those books, and it's just, it's such a learning curve for me, because I've spent many more years teaching a foreign language to me, not my native language. So we can talk shop another time about that, because that's a whole nother issue. That's just, it's, I don't know, it's different. It's
That's another thing about, like, when people say it's easy for me because I'm teaching them my native language, and it's like, that's a perfect example about how sometimes it's not,
it's really not.
it
No.
does have its advantages, but you also have your advantages. So I guess the main idea is like just to lean in to what are your advantages, lean
Yeah.
into that,
And
do
know
that.
what's tricky and what you need help with, or what you need, where you need to maybe ask the students, or like, yeah, know your weaknesses, right? Like, I know what my weakness is in teaching English. I know what my weakness is in teaching Spanish, and then I can support myself in those areas, right? Like, if I
Mhm.
know I'm teaching Spanish to construction workers, which is what I do right now, my company gave us a book that's like construction vocab, so that I can be more familiar with terms that I don't even know in English. Like, I don't even know like jackhammer. Like, I don't, if you showed me a
Backhoe.
bunch of
Like,
work,
what the hell's a
exactly,
backhoe? A
exactly.
backhoe?
And like I'm learning them as I'm teaching, but I'm like, in my
Yeah.
day-to-day life, I don't use the word like crane and like sledgehammer versus like other types of hammers. Like, it's just not my vocab. So like, even pointing them out, I'm like, I don't know which one this is. What's the difference with concrete and cement? Like, I don't know.
Good
So
one, yeah.
it's just, yeah, everything has, right? Anything we go into, we're going to have like our strong points and our weak points. And it's just that being conscious of like where you are, where you're starting at, what you need to help you. I think is just majorly like, you have a goal, right? Like, to be very intentional. Like, I want to teach Spanish to these English speakers. They need it for construction. Okay, I know what my goal is. Now I need to know what my support will be to help me achieve that, right? Because I am the teacher, so I do need to know something. But then they teach me the construction, and I just give them the word. I'm like, okay, that word is this in Spanish.
Yeah, yeah, and then formulate some grammar around it, and
It's
boom,
great.
there you have
Yeah.
language.
But it's so fun because it makes they're like in the teaching position of like, well, they tell me what the difference is between like soldering and some other, I don't even know. I'm like, okay, just explain it to me.
Yeah,
It's great though. I think it's empowering, which is what we also want to
that's
do with
so
our
cool.
kids, is we want to empower them. Like, I am not the authority here per se, just because I'm the teacher or the parent. Like, we're learning about this together. Like, my kids know so much more about different topics like Pokemon, or what have you. So like, let them teach you, let them guide, and then you just like kind of help along the way.
And then you know what else our kids know more about than we do?
Life,
How they feel. And
how
that's
they
something
feel. Oh
I
yeah.
think we overlook sometimes,
Yeah.
empowered. I love that word. That's what I use a lot in what I do. It's empowering them. My kids I'll ask them Spanish questions. Like, how do you say that in Spanish?
Mm.
Um, especially when I say no, I'm saying a word or a sentence wrong, I'll ask them, and that's gotta feel so good for them
Oh
that
yeah.
they don't think like we can get on our own heads. What if they don't think that I know everything,
Kids love knowing stuff. They love being right.
so
They love knowing more
yeah,
than their
yeah,
parents.
they get to show you something, they get to teach you something. That's awesome.
And we didn't get into how is your Spanish?
Yeah, not as good as it should be.
Okay, well, that's fine. That's fair enough. Hey, we all have our same thing with my Polish, right? I mean, it's fine. Or even my Spanish. Like I was saying, I don't know all these words, and it's fine. I mean, if as long as you don't need it that much, right? You're teaching English. You can get
Yeah, that's
around.
one of the problems. I never need it. So like then when I go out and I do have conversations with Spanish people, it's so like, kind of basic.
Mm,
And it's just that like I never like my work, this is in English. I
yeah,
teach in English. When I do business, it's for an American company in
in
English.
English,
When
right?
I write emails, it's in English. Everything is in English,
Mm, well,
So I have to become more intentional with learning.
yeah, I know. Well, we have so much on our plates, right? I mean, we're parents, we're entrepreneurs, we're doing all these things. We have to work, we have to make a living, we have to buy the groceries and all the other things that being an adult entails. So
Yeah.
it's fine. We're all
At
we're
the end
all
of the
okay.
day, I acknowledge its excuses. I acknowledge that.
Yeah.
And I just need to it's where I want to put my energy and focus. And it's apparently it's not a priority for me. That's what it comes down to.
But that's
Apparently,
okay.
not a priority for me.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
And you recognize it. And it's not,
Yeah.
you know, if you do end up needing it someday more, that'll force, right? That need will force you to do a little bit more. But if this is
Yeah,
like
when I
what you're
first-
giving right now, that's fine. Right.
Yeah.
Because if you wanted to give more, you'd give more.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think we do need to just acknowledge that it's not always perfect. Right?
That's it. It's a
100%.
journey.
It's a journey. Well, where can we find you, Jesse, if people want to get in touch? If they're like, "Ooh, I need business English," or "I'd love to practice my English more," where can we find you?
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to work my way out of the English teaching. So don't look for me if you want business English.
Okay. Okay. Good to know.
But my content mostly helps empower parents and entrepreneurs to feel more empowered. And it's funny that you use the word empowered. It's my it's my belief that empowered parents raise empowered children. And even bigger than that, empowered leaders lead empowered people. Right. And so a lot of my content on Instagram, on LinkedIn is where I'm most active nowadays. Just my name, Jesse Sweet.
Okay.
And it's about, how to live conscious lives, because I think the best leaders, you have to be conscious. You have to be conscious of what you're doing, what you're thinking, how you're feeling, and being able to adapt and adjust.
Yeah.
So how to live conscious lives, to live an empowered life, and to raise empowered kids, bilingual or not.
Right. Yeah. And it's that model, that example we're setting every day with them, right? Like the thing that I loved, the sentence you gave us, right? That's a win, because that is a positive, right? You're giving them this like positive idea, so that we're not focused on the negative. We're focused on, hey, it could have been, oh, I always say this wrong, but no, you're focused on the one time you said it right. That's what we're focused on.
Dude, yes.
Right? So like, that's what we want. We want to keep moving forward towards, great, you did it right that one time, or you did it well, or you succeeded, or you persevered. It was really hard, but you succeeded. And then let's keep that attitude of like positivity. Next time we can do that again, right? Not focused on the bad. Yeah, I think
what
that's
you
it.
appreciates.
Yeah, that's a great one. Well, thank you, Jesse. It's been a pleasure. We could stay and talk all day, which we said from the beginning. We knew this could be the case.
I know.
But yeah, hopefully we can maybe have you on again for another episode sometime. And yeah, keep us posted on all the business things. I will link up. You can give me all the places, and I'll link them so people can find you. And yeah, thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure.
Thank